Item number. Oh, that's the
Good
wrong
afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Miller, and the SCP we're going to be looking at today is SCP-2747.
SCP.
Object Class, Keter, previously Euclid, and Threat Level, Black, previously Green.
I think I'm more
Special
dangerous.
Containment Procedures. Foundation watchdog algorithms are to monitor online and print media for mention of SCP-2747 positive key phrases. All matched are to be tagged and forwarded to the Department of Analytics, which will provide further confirmation of SCP-2747 manifestation. In case of positive identification, all affected media are to be suitably corrected by a standard Foundation media alteration protocols. 912A, Twilight Zone. 943A, Poisoned Well. Observational Procedure, Lucid Chalice. Controlled observation of SCP-2747 will take place using local computing resources to procedurally generate narratives at varying levels of complexity and nestedness. Simultaneously, descriptions of the narratives are to be generated using Foundation media parsing, analytic, meta-analytic software at varying degrees of abstraction. The results can then be examined for signs of SCP-2747 by periodically scanning for data irregularities. Any generated narrative containing such irregularities can then be flagged as an instance of SCP-2747, with its seed conditions subsequently tagged as SCP-2747 conducive.
Anything using all these, you gotta use all these big words.
The boundary
It's gotta be
conditions of
dangerous.
SCP-2747 can then be identified and mapped with a sufficient degree of clarity. Furthermore, a watch list of 7,000 artists is to be maintained and observed at all times for localized signs of SCP-2747 manifestation in their respective works using the aforementioned analytic, meta-analytic software. In order to increase the observable resolution and range of deeply nested metafictional manifestations, this watch list should consist mainly of individuals, groups, and organizations whose works tend toward containing metafictional content, such as mise-en-abîmes and stories within stories. The sponsoring and/or covert influencing of such content creators can be sanctioned to that end. The results of Lucid Chalice will be documented within the current documentation as Appendix B. Description: SCP-2747 is a phenomenon appearing in print and online media whereby platforms dedicated to the discussion of works of fiction begin to mention a non-existent instance of fictional media. Despite said non-existence, articles, posts, comments, and other related meta-content created with regard to the non-existent work of fiction will be found treating it as real. The non-existent work of fiction can be mentioned by various individuals in varying capacities, ranging from brief mentions in forum posts to being the subject of entire academic essays. Descriptions, screenshots, photographs of physical copies, and brief segments of text from said work of fiction can often be discovered in SCP-2747 affected media. Descriptions of it are entirely consistent with each other, and it is proven possible to reconstruct whole segments of fictitious media via descriptions of it taken from SCP-2747 generated meta-content. A list of fictitious media generated by SCP-2747 has been appended below. See Appendix A. Where possible, the affected material can be traced to existing individuals. However, when questioned under duress, said individuals invariably deny having written the affected material and deny all existence of the fictitious media mentioned within. SCP-2747 has never been documented in real time. All observed instances thus far have been recorded post hoc. No instances have been documented prior to January 2008. The reason for this was previously unknown, but it is now known that it conforms to pataphysical observations documented in full in Appendix B. It is the current hypothesis of the Department of Analytics that SCP-2747 represents evidence of a naturally occurring anafabula, or anti-narrative, a cluster of independent signs, iconography, and naremes
A narreme is defined as a base unit of a narrative, much in the same way that a mytheme denotes a base unit of myth, or a meme denotes a base unit of culture.
That, when included to
I
a
was actually
sufficient
thinking,
extent within a fictional construct, leads to mutual annihilation. First-hand reconstruction of the anafabulous properties is impossible, given its anomalous nature, but second-hand and third-hand descriptions have been generated from observational procedure Lucid Chalice and appended below. See Appendix B. It can affect through layers of metafictional narrative, i.e. a meta-narrative containing the anafabula will cease to exist within the narrative, followed by the narrative itself disappearing from our reality.
This interpretation of metaphysical reality layers of metafictional narrative has yet to be verified by Foundation observations at large, but appear concurrent with observations obtained from transfictional anomalies such as SCP-1304, SCP-2614, and 001.
The key identifier of the anafabula is that it invariably represents an in-universe antagonist or anathema in all manifestations of SCP-2747, likely due to inherent narreme components indicating its alien yet centralizing nature.
Update. The above-mentioned hypothesis has been confirmed as a working model of SCP-2747. Please refer to Appendix B. Update. The following procedures are to be enacted following the successful conclusion of observational procedure Lucid Chalice. See Appendix B. At no time are the properties of the anafabula as outlined in Appendix B to arise in real life, whether as a result of deliberate or natural action. Any object, person or event bearing more than significance level alpha to the semblance threshold is to be altered via whatever means possible. Access to information regarding SCP-2747, especially the information contained within Appendix B, is to be strictly limited to clearance levels 42747 and 3 analytics. Due to the pataphysical implications and inherent uncontainability of SCP-2747 as detailed in Appendix B, it is to be classified as Keter with immediate effect.
Appendix A. Partial list of
They keep talking
manifestations
about
of
Appendix B, like, I can't wait
SCP-2747.
to hear Appendix
Additional
B.
material. Non-existent work referenced.
Oh, there he
Punta
is.
de la Espira. Medium, short story. Extent of manifestation. 17 articles created and edited on wikipedia.org. Summary of work. Punta de la Espira, in English, Tip of the Spire or Spiral, is apparently a 1951 short story by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It describes an unnamed protagonist as he sails down a river towards a desolate, black-horned mountain in order to deliver a gift to an unspecified recipient. The journey is rough and treacherous, and he dies of exhaustion at the end of the story, appearing to be no closer to his goal than when he first began. The mountain is described in detail throughout the story, with recurring metaphors alternatingly alluding to it as either an abode of the gods or a demonic presence. Non-existent work referenced. Taitoru, Japanese.
The film's title describes itself. It is the Japanese phonetic pronunciation for the English word title.
Medium, animated film. Extent of manifestation. One article created on tvtropes.org, with 55 edits made to various trope pages ranging from Despair Event Horizon to Foreshadowing and What do you mean it wasn't made on drugs? Summary of work. Taitoru appears to be an animated film directed by Satoshi Kon shortly before his death. It is described as a psychological thriller chronicling a struggling manga artist as she attempts to complete and publish her first work under a tight deadline. Stress takes its toll and boundaries blur. She begins to hallucinate, and the movie ends ambiguously as to whether she achieved her goal or succumbed to her weaknesses. Typical of Kon's style, the animation is described as meticulous, kaleidoscopic, and occasionally deeply disturbing. One scene features the protagonist physically grappling with the shadows in her apartment, described under the trope entry for Your Mind Makes It Real as the manifestation of her creative block, which eventually engulf and consume her. Non-existent work referenced. No Sister of Mine. Medium, video game. Extent of manifestation. 77 threads on somethingawful.com, each carrying between 3 and 103 comments. Most users were established members of the Something Awful community. Summary of work. No Sister of Mine is supposedly a turn-based role-playing video game of the fantasy horror genre published by Pokahan.
While Pokahan existed as a major game development studio operating out of Seoul between 2002 and 2005, no record of No Sister of Mine has ever been found.
For the Nintendo GameCube in 2005. According to reviewers, the player controls a party of 6 unnamed characters as they explore a ruined kingdom with the intention to find a lost companion, referred to as Sister. It was widely panned by the reviewers, with much criticism being leveled at the glitch-filled battle system, incoherent dialogue, seemingly incomplete graphics, repetitive soundtrack described as nauseating and headache-inducing, as well as being impossible to complete. The game's non-playable characters continuously mention a coal-black, thorn-bound tome that, when read from, would enable one to either obtain great power or unleash a dreadful curse. What most reviewers assumed to be the final questline required the player to backtrack through the game's previous areas and recover fragments of the tome using their newfound abilities. However, the reviewers unanimously claim that no fragments can be found. One reviewer goes as far as to claim that the items themselves were never found inside the game's coding in the first place. Non-existent work referenced.
You just
The
put it out there, like,
Scolia
find the
Wiki.
gems.
Medium,
Or the fragments.
collaborative
It's like
fiction.
not in the game.
Extent of manifestation. 49 different pieces of fan fiction, ranging from 343 to 2,401 words in length, posted on fanfiction.net, each bearing between 1 and 6 comments. Summary of work. The Scolia Wiki is deduced to be an online collaborative fictional universe belonging to the horror, speculative fiction, and weird fiction genres. It appears to have been hosted on some form of wiki site, though the address itself is never mentioned. The exact nature of Scolia plot is hard to discern, as the various pieces of fanfiction sport vastly differing storylines and range from character interpretations, further complicated by the involvement of other fictional universes and settings. What is known is that it involves a cast of 7 characters wandering between a series of realms, amassing and collecting items, possessing supernatural or abnormal properties. One item features heavily throughout the compiled works, a 7-sided obsidian emblem said to possess the power to destroy any object, person, or abstract concept with a single touch. It appears to be of great interest to the protagonists, who repeatedly make attempts to acquire it. However, it also appears to be currently in the possession of a sinister, unnamed antagonist, who is alluded to repeatedly in several works, yet is never seen. Non-existent work referenced. I.O. Medium, musical album. Extent of manifestation. Review columns in a total of 14 reputable publications, including the New Bombay Times, Pitchfork, and LA Flipside. Summary of work. I.O. is described as the 9th studio album by the now defunct English rock band Radiohead. It contains 6 tracks measuring a total of 34 minutes and 18 seconds. The majority of tracks appear to consist mostly of digitally manipulated samples from Radiohead's previous albums, layered over with sparse acoustic instrumentation and vocals. Reception of the album appears to be highly positive, with the exception of Pitchfork's Jessica Green, who gave an average review of 7.0.
In particular, Green felt that the album suffered from hasty and uncoordinated post-production, likely not undertaken by Radiohead themselves. Audio cuts between the 5th and 6th track were described to be unnecessarily jarring, given the seamless flow between every other track in the album.
It is mentioned that the album uses a characteristic, grating binaural reverb layered over lead singer Tom York's solo vocal track as a musical motif, embodying what the New Bombay Times' Gulshan Anirudh believes to be its central themes of spirals of isolation and inspiration, of feedback loops that resonate into the level of the deeply personal, the trembling core of creative psyche. Anirudh also mentions lyrics referencing suicide and self-harm, though presented through a series of oblique metaphors. I.O. never fears to toy with the idea of self-hatred and self-desecration, yet the album as a whole seems to fall short of its mark, always orbiting yet never quite touching upon the dreadful center. Non-existent work referenced. Maveen, or a treatise on the metaphysics of inner space travel and the kingdom of Erekar, whose name is Darkness Made Light, and further theological expositions thereof. Medium, novel. Extent of manifestation, 7 articles published in a single week in various academic journals of literary criticism, each by reputable scholars. Summary of work. Mavine is described as the contents of a manuscript and accompanying charcoal illustrations found in the house of a Rithabile Abrams in 2014. Abrams appeared to have been a reclusive writer and artist working as a maintenance technician in Bloemfontein, South Africa, and clinically diagnosed with schizophrenia.
A number of individuals partially match this description, though no work similar to Mavine exists.
Mavine is a nested frame narrative written in Afrikaans, purporting to be a novel by the 17th century Dutch mystic. It describes the journey of the mystic, whose name is only given as Maas, learning of the structure of the Earth's interior as revealed to him in a vision. At the beginning of the novel, Maas dreams of a supernatural being that is aware of its nature as a dream entity and is highly indebted to Maas for bringing it into existence. In exchange, it promises to divulge to Maas the secrets of Earth. Maas, being corporeal, is unable to pass through the ground, and so the being decides to simply narrate the journey. It speaks of 6 realms demarcated by thresholds, ranging from the realm of treasure and minerals to an intangible plane of light and sound. Beyond these 6 realms lies another threshold, this time one of cold and silence, which is described to be Earth's core. Before it can be elaborated upon, Maas wakes and the dream ends. Non-existent work referenced, X-Locks. Medium, interactive novel. Extent of manifestation, in-depth posts on 7 different fiction review blogs, along with a mention in a Time magazine article,
The NKO Ingrid, Time, Issue 35, 2008.
on experimental narrative forms. The title is also mentioned in 175 Twitter posts, largely in the context of recommending it as an interesting, if underrated, piece of interactive fiction. Summary of work. X-Locks appears to be a work of interactive fiction of the mystery genre, written in a mixture of English, Catalan, and Spanish. It is presented as a set of epistolary narratives from the points of view of 6 characters, and a stream of consciousness narration of ambiguous provenance. Readers navigate between these 7 story threads, discovering hints of a murder or several murders. Eventually, the narratives converge at a roadside diner during a thunderstorm, and the characters exchange their stories. From here, the resultant narrative structure cannot adequately be described as simple framing devices or stories within stories, as the inner tales eventually begin to intertwine such that later tales shed new light on ones recounted earlier, or themselves linked to segments of text earlier on in the narrative after lengthy detours. At several points, characters attempt to consult the testimony of an absent individual, referred to as the stranger. The identity of the murderers or victims is never known, nor does the story have a conventional ending. Appendix B. Observations and conclusions from Lucid Chalice. Additional material.
Just listen.
Data lost.
Oh. What?
This concludes today's lecture.
Ain't that a
Thank you for listening.
Data
if indeed you
lost.
still are, and you are all dismissed.
why would they keep mentioning
Goodbye.
Appendix B? And it is like data loss. Like, nah, you don't get to. Goddamn. That didn't. Oh, okay. Because I was like, that did not feel like 39 minutes.
Welcome to another episode of Extra Credit. Today we're going to be looking at
I forgot that he does this.
SCP-2747,
He does,
written
like,
by Min and
explanations.
explained by Reddit user Chaltech, also with thanks to Taffeta. So, without further ado, let's get to it. Special containment procedures. One thing to call out is that the first image contains a fractal, a mathematically defined image which has the same characteristics as the whole, meaning that if you zoom in on a fractal, you'll see an image that looks identical to the original. This is clever for reasons we're about to go into. It matches a lot of themes in this article. Foundation watchdog algorithms are to monitor online
Yeah,
and
I was like,
media
this
for mention of
looked familiar. I've seen this
SCP-2747
before.
positive key
Pretty
phrases.
sure I've seen that
All
before.
matched are to be tagged and forwarded to the Department of Analytics, which will provide further confirmation of SCP-2747 manifestation. In case of positive identification, all affected media are to be suitably corrected by a standard Foundation media alteration protocols. 912A, Twilight Zone. 943A, Poisoned Well. This tells us that the anomaly is connected to certain key phrases that can be found in media, either online or printed. It's not just a phrase or word, though. It's something that is made from these phrases. It's not a cognitohazard. What about observational procedure lucid
No,
chalice?
it's not. Okay.
Controlled observation of SCP-2747 will take place using local computing resources to procedurally generate narratives at varying levels of complexity and nestedness. Ooh, hang on a second. Let's unpack that. Controlled observation of SCP-2747 will take place using local computing resources. Nothing weird there. Procedurally generate narratives. Procedural generation is a method of creating data algorithmically as opposed to manually. What does that mean? Let's use a video game example. Let's say you're in charge of designing the art of a city that will be full of brick walls. You could, as an artist, draw each individual brick in every wall, but that becomes impractical very quickly. No one wants to do that when there are miles of walls to consider. Instead, you can create rules, or an algorithm, that tell the software how to draw a brick wall. You can insert rules such as create a pattern of red
like
rectangles
AI.
separated by white lines. This would look completely different in real-world usage. You may want to add other rules that make the wall look more realistic, such as have this much graininess on the brick surface, put in this many discolored spots per square meter. This creates an algorithm which tells the computer how to draw a wall. Creating an algorithm is more time-consuming than drawing a single brick, but the computer can follow these rules for as long as it has storage space, and totally autonomously. Procedural generation is great for things that need to run automatically or at higher speed than a human could manage. This means that for whatever reason, the Foundation needs to generate narratives or stories automatically and at a faster rate than humans can manage. Simultaneously, descriptions of the narratives are to be generated using Foundation media parsing, analytic, meta-analytic software at varying degrees of abstraction. This means that the generated stories are going to be interpreted by software to create summaries and descriptions. At varying levels of abstraction means the descriptions have a range of detail. For example, anything from a thesis-level analysis down to Farm Boy destroys Planet Smasher with space magic. The results can then be examined for signs of SCP-2747 by periodically scanning for data irregularities. These descriptions are then scanned also by computer for any irregularities characteristic of whatever SCP-2747 is. All of this should tell us a few things so far. First, that the author has really put some thought into exactly how you would generate stories en masse and make that data useful at a human level. Second, the Foundation needs to create and scan mind-numbing amounts of narratives at a frantic rate. Whatever 2747 is, it's very dangerous to warrant such intense generation and scanning. Any generated narrative containing such irregularities can then be flagged as an instance of SCP-2747, with its seed conditions subsequently tagged as SCP-2747 conducive. Given a large enough sample size, the boundary conditions of SCP-2747 can then be identified and mapped with a sufficient degree of clarity. Ah, this is research. The Foundation does this to identify instances of SCP-2747 and know what tropes are parts of the story, or seed conditions, lead to 2747. They can finally use all this data to know exactly what causes or leads to 2747. We are seeing an anomaly in the initial stages of understanding and discovery. We're still finding out more about the anomaly and actively researching it as we go along. This will likely lead to further changes in the containment procedures as we learn more. Furthermore, a watch list of 7,000 artists is to be maintained and observed at all times for localized signs of SCP-2747 manifestation in their respective works using the aforementioned analytic, meta-analytic software. Since 2747 is capable of being made in any narrative with the right set of concepts and themes, the Foundation also needs to be looking at artists producing works to see if what they're creating contains 2747. In order to increase the observable resolution and range of deeply nested metafictional manifestations, this watch list should consist mainly of individuals, groups, and organizations whose works tend toward containing metafictional content, such as mise-en-abemes and stories within stories. The sponsoring and/or covert influencing of such content creators can be sanctioned to that end. Nesting here refers to containing something inside itself or something similar. For example, reading a story that itself contains a story. A non-literary example would be a Russian doll. Metafictional is a fictional story about a fictional story. House of Leaves, for example, contains both of these. The resolution and range part suggests searching, as if by telescope. A mise-en-abemes, in literature or art, refers to a recursive piece of art, like a painting containing a smaller copy of itself. Putting all this together, this means the Foundation wants to be able to create and study narratives that contain many layers of fiction. The results of Lucid Chalice will be documented within the current documentation as Appendix B. To recap where we're at, the Foundation is both monitoring art being produced naturally and mass-producing enormous amounts of art to identify 2747, which is something that emerges from certain themes and tropes found in art. It's not yet fully understood, so in-depth research is still going on. It's also Keter class, so we know it's highly dangerous and resists containment. Description: SCP-2747 is a phenomenon appearing in print and online media whereby platforms dedicated to the discussion of works of fiction begin to mention a non-existent instance of fictional media. Despite said non-existence, articles, posts, comments, and other related meta-content created with regard to the non-existent work of fiction will be found treating it as real. The non-existent work of fiction can be mentioned by various individuals in varying capacities, ranging from brief mentions in forum posts to being the subject of entire academic essays. This is telling us that 2747 is a phenomenon where people will start to talk about and react to a piece of fiction that does not exist. Reviews are written, fan sites are created, fan art is
fake
drawn,
news.
shipping commences. Effectively, it's the appearance of every bit of influence a piece of fiction would have, but without that specific piece of fiction actually existing. Again, I'm getting strong House of Leaves vibes. Descriptions, screenshots, photographs of physical copies, and brief segments of text from said work of fiction can often be discovered in SCP-2747 affected media. Descriptions of it are entirely consistent with each other, and it is proven possible to reconstruct whole segments of fictitious media via descriptions of it taken from SCP-2747 generated meta-content. A list of fictitious media generated by SCP-2747 has been appended below. See Appendix A. The anomalous portion of this is that this echo of the work of fiction, this fandom, reaction, cultural imprint of the story, is entirely self-consistent, even to the point of being able to reconstruct segments of it from references to it. We're finding these echoes of the fictional story, but we're not finding the story itself. Where possible, the affected material can be traced to existing individuals. However, when questioned under duress, said individuals invariably deny having written the affected material and deny all existence of the fictitious media.
That's what they show.
mentioned
The
within.
people don't even
Except, of course,
remember
if
writing.
you ask the authors of these works. They have no idea what you're referring to.
Yeah, because the thing doesn't
SCP-2747
exist.
has never been documented in real time. All observed instances thus far have been
Almost sound like
recorded
a
post-hoc.
paradox.
No instances have been documented prior to January 2008. The reason for this was previously unknown, but it is now known that it conforms to pataphysical observations documented in full in Appendix B. This starts by saying that we've never seen it actually happen. We've only seen the after effects, and we have no idea why. But then this was altered due to new information, and that word pataphysical shows up. If you're not familiar with this term, here's a refresher. Meta describes reality using symbols, like a metaphor. Jane slept like a baby. Peta describes the meta like meta describes reality. It's one step up. Jane slept like a baby, which had tired itself out, destroying the playroom like a tornado.
Okay.
It is the current hypothesis of the Department of Analytics that SCP-2747 represents evidence of a naturally occurring anafabula, or anti-narrative, a cluster of independent signs, iconography, and naremes that, when included to a sufficient extent within a fictional construct, leads to mutual annihilation. Nareme here is a fundamental unit of narrative, akin to a trope or concept. The farm boy with noble heritage, the magic sword, darkness, etc. This means if you have the right set of signs, icons, and concepts occurring in a fictional universe, the combination annihilates the fictional universe from the real world. Real as far as the Foundation is concerned anyway. First-hand reconstruction of the anafabulous properties is impossible, given its anomalous nature, but second-hand and third-hand descriptions have been generated from observational procedure Lucid Chalice and appended below. See Appendix B. Because the anafabula annihilates the fictional universe it appears in, there's no way to study it directly, which is why the Foundation is piecing things together with their mass-produced fiction. It can affect through layers of metafictional narrative, i.e. a meta-narrative containing the anafabula will cease to exist within the narrative, followed by the narrative itself disappearing from our reality. And this is where things start to get interesting. Say you have a movie which contains a book. In the book inside the movie, which the characters describe the plot of, the anafabula forms. The first thing that'll happen is that the movie will continue to exist, but without the book. Characters will still reference the book as they did before, but the book itself will be gone. At some undefined point after that, the movie itself will vanish from reality.
Okay.
There's also a footnote here.
This interpretation of metaphysical reality layers of metafictional narrative has yet to be verified by Foundation observations at large, but appear concurrent with observations obtained from transfictional anomalies such as SCP-1304, SCP-2614, and 001 redacted.
This means that the Foundation, through looking at anomalies that deal with multiple layers of fiction, has theorized that they themselves are in a fictional universe, and that all of reality is fictional universes contained within each other. I.e., we write about the Foundation, which writes about a book, which contains a movie, etc. We also do learn one thing about our anafabula. The key identifier of the anafabula is that it invariably represents an in-universe antagonist or anathema in all manifestations of SCP-2747, likely due to inherent narrowing components indicating its alien, yet centralizing nature.
Update. The above-mentioned hypothesis has been confirmed as a working model of SCP-2747. Please refer to Appendix B.
This theory, reality itself being multiple layers of fiction, works as a model to predict SCP-2747, if nothing else. Next are some instructions that say what will change in the containment procedures if the Foundation is ever able to fully deduce and describe the anafabula from Lucid Chalice.
Update. The following procedures are to be enacted following the successful conclusion of Observational Procedure Lucid Chalice. See Appendix B. At no time are the properties of the anafabula as outlined in Appendix B to arise in real life, whether as a result of deliberate or natural action. Any object, person, or event bearing more than significance level alpha to the semblance threshold is to be altered via whatever means possible. Access to information regarding SCP-2747, especially the information contained within Appendix B, is to be strictly limited to clearance levels 42747 and 3 analytics. Due to the pataphysical implications and inherent uncontainability of SCP-2747 as detailed in Appendix B, it is to be classified as Keter with immediate effect.
The Foundation, with their theory that they themselves are in a fictional narrative, do not want the anafabula to ever be assembled in their reality, as that would then lead to the annihilation of their world. Because of this, Appendix B, which contains the results of Lucid Chalice, the Foundation's full understanding of the anafabula's nature and how it works is restricted to need-to-know personnel only. Appendix A is a list of SCP-2747 manifestations, situations where this fictional narrative clearly existed at one point, but now has been wiped from reality. The descriptions of the annihilated fictions do give us some clue to the nature of the Anafabula due to common themes. Those themes include darkness, shadow, black objects, fiction being annihilated, and the inability to complete or create a fictional work. The annihilated works cataloged here include Taitoru, a Japanese animated film, I.O., a musical album, and the Scully Pendro Wiki, a collaborative fiction wiki specializing in horror. And here's the core to the article, the juicy center we've all been waiting for.
Appendix
B, the observations and conclusions from Lucid Chalice. This is what the Foundation has learned about the Anafabula, how it's formed, the characteristics of it, everything collected into a single place. It's as complete of a description of the Anafabula that can be formed.
Data lost.
Really, though, we should have expected that. If you
God
collect a
damn it.
full description of a purely
thought he was
fictional
gonna-
entity, what's the difference between the description of that entity and the entity itself?
Oh, okay. I see
Only the
what you did.
Foundation
I
could
see
look an
what's-
apocalypse in the eye and feel annoyed by it. They have another one to add to the list. So, here we are. The Foundation discovered a recursive, fiction-annihilating phenomenon
Because
which
Appendix
has a
B-
lot to do with dark, shadowed structures, a sentient, antagonistic...
Because Appendix B describes the thing, like they said. There's no actual, there's the effect of the thing, but the actual thing is gone. So like where you only see the remnants of it, you don't actually see where that information comes from. So I was like, so that's what Appendix B. Okay, because I didn't even catch that at first. I was like, oh, okay, so they were going to describe pretty much everything with Appendix B, and it said data loss. So I was like,
entity and fiction being annihilated.
the
There's
first time you
recursion
taught
again.
that one,
It has
that went over my
destroyed
head.
who knows how many fictional narratives, destroyed
so
the narratives
focused
that
on
contain those that it's already destroyed, and finally chewed its way up to the Foundation's lair. Hell, by studying the Anafabula so heavily, the Foundation has accelerated its own destruction by giving it so many opportunities to enter their universe, and by creating one in the layer just beneath them. Did it have a start? Was there some poor hapless scientist, an infinite number of layers down, who created this, and it's been chewing its way up the entire time? Or is it just entropy manifesting in another manner? Is it turtles all the way down? Honestly though, can you imagine how terrible it would be to lose the Foundation? Imagine the entire SCP Wiki just vanishing, and all there would be to describe it would be posts like this, cataloging an annihilated universe. And then we'd follow suit. Don't play with recursion, kids. You'll never stop. Alright, thanks again to Chaltak and Taffeta, and also Min Min, for writing the article itself. And that about does it today.
That would be interesting.
Thank you for listening. If indeed you still are, and you're all dismissed again. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
I would like to give a special thank you to...
That is interesting. It made me think, what if the SCP, like, wiki just disappeared? And then all he had is videos like this. He's like, Because didn't that technically almost happen? There wasn't somebody trying to, like, I think someone in Russia, some guy was trying to copyright, like, SCP, like, years ago. And people like, you can't, because it's kind of like a group project. Everyone just adding to it. And this guy comes in and is like, I'm going to copyright it. The whole thing. Or something based on, I guess, Russian laws. But I mean, like I said, I don't know how that would equate to everybody else. Because, you might say, hey, it's copywritten in Russia. But maybe that might work differently. Like if he tried to sue, like me or something. Like if I wrote an SCP and he tried to, like, sue me in America. It's like, could he sue me? He probably could sue me based on Russian laws, but then who's going to? It's not going to guarantee that if he wins in Russia that I would give him any money. or whatever. So it's like it's kind of weird because the kind of copyright is not necessarily universal across the board. And so some people talk about like like Japanese copyright laws and how they'll come in and just claim everything, even though you follow the basic rules of like fair use. But to them, they're like, no, we don't think that you did. And if you appeal it and say that you did do it, and they reply and say, no, the claim is still valid, the next step could be, because it says it when you do that, because I've done that before, where it was like the next step will be, basically the person could take legal action, or the person or company or whatever it is can take, now it could just will just go further and become legal, because go to court and stuff over it. And a lot of people just like, oh fuck it, I ain't, because you don't want to do all that. But some people have done it. Didn't they do what's his name? They won the host of H3H3 because he went to court and won because somebody's trying to sue him for copyright infringement because he used I don't know how much of a video he used of some guy, but he was arguing that he transformed it, and the guy was arguing that he didn't. So, but the judge sided with, isn't it Ethan? Yeah, Ethan sided with him. So, but that's what I mean, because that's kind of YouTube policy. They get someone manual reviews, they can be like, no, I don't think you transformed it enough, in my opinion. So I'm putting a copyright claim out, or I'm gonna put a strike on your video, on your channel, which you can call it your channel. You get 3 strikes, and your channel will be deleted. Unless you're a big YouTuber, you can get you can go talk to somebody at YouTube and they can give it back. But I am not that. But yeah, this was interesting. That went over my head when it was like that. Is a data loss, and then I was like, oh, he started explaining it. I was like, oh, I get it, because the origin of the media is gone, and it's only everything else around it. Like he said, fan art, people talking about it, other, I guess, people writing about or deriving art from that. But where the origin comes from is gone. And even the people who post that wrote it have no recollection of writing out. I'm thinking, did they actually write it? Because he also said it's not I forgot the word, a cognitive hazard. I kept wanting to say cohesive in my head. Guess he said it's not that. So I was like, did the art actually? Did the media actually exist? Because it's like, what was it? A novel, anime. There's a bunch of different stuff. The book. So I was like, did that actually exist, or was something telling everybody it existed, and then just saying that, oh, this person made it, and then they question that person. The person like, I don't know what you're talking about, and it's not even like from the way this was described. It's not like, oh, they wrote the novel or wrote and drew the show, the anime or whatever, and then they got lost time, and it was like, like, what about this? 6 months that missing, like no one saw you or anything like that. And then right after that, this thing was published. But then it's like, well, but then it wasn't published because you didn't see it, because like it doesn't exist. So like I said, it's kind of like a paradox where it's like, if you existed, like I said, I existed, and somehow went back in time and kept my mother and father from meeting, would you would think I would cease to exist. Now, I guess if I still existed, then you was like, okay, they still met somewhere down the road. Maybe I changed. Maybe I'm younger because they didn't meet. Instead of meeting when they were in their early 20s, they met when they were in their late 20s. So, like, me and my siblings all were pushed down, like to that point. So we all were born later, or like if I'm still exist, but in a different form. Like I might even look different because I'm younger. Well, I guess I would look different, but I mean, I guess say I might look different than what I did younger. So it wouldn't be like, oh, you just time went, like they had you later in life, so you look the same like as I did when I was 19 or something. Like, no, you might actually look different than what you did. Like maybe I don't need glasses. Maybe I start balding early. Maybe I don't. So maybe my hair grows much faster than maybe. They use like different things in your life might change. Because I'm thinking more like, oh, well, if it comes to a different time period, of course, I wouldn't probably be a millennial. I'd probably be a Gen Z if I was, old. It depends on, I guess, when they were to make me. But like I said, if you go back in time, that's I stop them from getting together, and they don't get together. But instead of me disappearing, I still exist. But I'm like a paradox, right? Like kind of like a what's that character's name? Reverse Flash, because Reverse Flash is like a paradox. Like he exists outside of time. Like he doesn't exist. I mean, he existed, but now I'm forgetting of the story because I think he was killed at some point. Because I know Batman, technically, not Batman, but Thomas Wayne Batman killed him. And because I'm forgetting the story, but I know he's like a paradox because he doesn't exist. He exists outside of time, so the timeline doesn't affect him. So, or technically, he exists outside of time, so he kind of exists everywhere, kind of like in all timelines, but not at the same time. Which is interesting because I'm like, is he just erased from existence? Like I said, if I would have stopped my parents from meeting, but for some reason I still exist, I didn't cease to exist, then I would exist outside of time. But there would be no origin point. I mean, I guess technically I still exist, but unless that would be like if my parents were still together, but everything about me, like people who know me, maybe things I've written down, or maybe stuff like that, like everything around my existence exists, but you will never see me. Like, you never see me. That I don't know. Maybe it's like if, like I said, the fan art and stuff like that. But I wonder if you filmed. But that's interesting because if it like I said, it would have to indicate that the actual thing existed at some point. Like it was existed and then ceased to exist almost immediately after it was finished. But I feel like that's not what this is about. I feel like it's saying that this thing never existed. Whatever this entity or whatever this is that is causing people to be familiar with this whatever medium it is like telling people, and people know about it, and then you have people writing about it, drawing art or whatever about it, but never actually seeing the medium. And then that's when they said they talk to the people who's supposed to have written this stuff, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Cause that's what, like, it's like it kind of reminds me like Inception was they implanted the idea in someone's head, but the person can't know the idea was planted. They have to think that they thought of it. Otherwise, it's not an idea, and they know that the person will know that they were coerced into thinking that. So it would just, the whole thing would fall apart. It kind of makes me think of that. Like, you don't know the origin or where the idea came from, because the idea came from because you think it came from you, but somebody implanted it in your head. So to that person, they don't know. They think they came up with it, or I guess they could, if you implant in their head, they can make them think that somebody else gave them that idea, and then they would go along and execute the idea, but they don't know that you implanted that in their head, so they don't know the true origins of it. But the thing, I guess, if they did that, but see, like I said, if you in that situation, just like they went back and asked like the authors, like, did you write this? And they're like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Fuck off. That'll be like if I planted the idea, it said that this person made them think that somebody in their life told them that idea, and then they executed it in the real world when they talked to that person who I said gave them that idea. The other person's like, I don't know what you're talking about. We didn't have that conversation. Yeah, and especially I implanted an idea, said, oh, y'all had this conversation at this thing, and they were both at that thing, but they're like, I don't remember talking about that. Just like in this situation with the authors and stuff, was like, what you talking about? Like, I didn't write that, I didn't draw that, like, I don't know where that came from, but everyone thinks that they did it. That's what I'm saying. So unless the actual piece actually existed at some point, and then as soon as it existed, as soon as the person was done writing it, it couldn't have just poofed. It existed right there, because then how would everyone else know about it? Or I guess, I don't know if everyone knows about it, because like everyone on Earth knows about it. This is something making everyone on Earth know about it, and there's certain people are like, I can draw a fan art too. I find this really interesting, so I'll write fan fiction and shit like that to it, or I'll elaborate on it and spin it off into a TV show or stuff like that. And then where you get that from? It's based on a book, but they're like, well, who wrote it? This person, and they can't find the book anywhere or where they got that from, and the person who they said wrote it don't know what the fuck they talking about, So yeah, this was I was like, at first I was like, well, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. That's what I'm saying. He using a lot of $10 words. I know what they mean, but when he was talking, I was just like, somehow I didn't know what I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? I was like, what is this? I was like, this sounds like someone who has a large vocabulary, who is just talking, just to talk. Because they want everyone to know they have a large vocabulary. But then it started making sense a little bit. But I was so focused on Appendix B that when it said data loss, I was like, oh, come on, I was waiting all this time because he kept mentioning it. And I was like, I wanted to know about Appendix B. And then I really like that he started doing explanations, because some of these, like, people like me with a smooth brain, we need a little more of a breakdown. So it's like, okay, this is actually what this means, or what that means, or what he thinks this means or that means. And that's okay, I can see that. And then when someone says that, oh, I think it means this, sometimes it can make you start questioning it yourself, and then you start bringing up other ideas like what it could mean, but that you didn't think of until he brought up an idea of what it could mean. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, okay. And then we mentioned, and I was like, oh, the data loss. I was like, I get it. I get what you did there, because it was going to explain where it comes from, or what it, I guess technically what it is, more specifically, and the data was lost. So you can't really explain that. You can only explain what it is, because you don't know where. Well, I guess technically they wouldn't know where. I can't remember, because they said when they talked to people who supposedly wrote it, they had no idea what they were talking about. So you can't pinpoint, I guess, the actual origin, or like see the actual physical copy. Like, hey, where's you storyboard? You right there. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is a brain twister. Because if it exists, because you would think the person, because then that's another thing. A bunch of other people think this thing exists, but then when they talk to the person who supposedly created it, they don't know what they're talking about, and there's no proof of it actually existing, other than the after effect of how this particular piece of art affected everyone else. But then they are like, because then I'm like, where'd you see this at? Where'd you read this at if the thing doesn't exist? Like, how did you make fan art if we can't actually find the thing? Unless the thing actually exists, and maybe I'm misunderstanding it, and it actually exists, but they can't find, but the actual person who it says wrote it or made or created it didn't, and they can't find the origin of it. It just exists. But then he said it doesn't. No, because he said it doesn't exist anymore. I'll be sitting there going back and forth. I hope you all enjoyed my reaction. And if you did, make sure to hit that thumbs up button down below. Make sure to subscribe if you're here. Hit that bell if you want to be notified when I upload new videos. Comment down below. Share this video. See y'all next time. Peace.